Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nazjatar. I have left this for a few days. It's been available for testing for a little while now, purely because we need to get a feel for it. This is a place we're likely to spend the next few months. In fact, visiting on a probably regular basis. It is one of the two new zones that is coming in 8.2. The other, of course, being Mechagon, which we have looked at, and functionally serves a very different purpose. Mechagon, of course, being designed so that it's somewhere where you can kind of plant your feet and grind, or you can wander around and look for interesting little things to interact with and collect bits and bobs. So you can make things like this Mechanocat mount here. Not sure if everybody's seen it yet, but it's very small right now. Hopefully they're going to make it a bit larger. But that's what Mechagon is for. Nazjatar is the opposite of that. We're looking at something a bit more traditional here. It's got world quests, it's got a new world mob, world boss to go and kill, and yeah, that's what it's for. Now, we are in our new haven, new home is what it's called, Newhome. This is the Horde one, and as you can see, some familiar faces here. We've got Lothramar, Thelrissa, Oculus, and our new friends, the Kelfin, representing the faction, the Unshackled. And the reason they're Unshackled is the Naga have been abusing the old Kelfin. They've been putting Metroids on their head and turning them into slaves to do all their dirty work. And as we travel around Newhome, as you know, a little bit, you can see this is like a triage room, really. You can see all these guys are lying around. You can see on the tooltip, these are mind-shackled giants who have been affected by having these Metroids on their heads, and we've got medics going around trying to heal them, trying to nurse them back to health after being freed, such things like that. And this is one of the two places, of course, you will be gaining the reputation in order to unlock flying. So you will need to come here if you do want to fly in Battle for Azeroth. You're going to have to come and do some content down here. And of course, we have an arbitrary currency, which is not surprising. In the case of Nazjatar, it is, of course, prismatic mana pearls, which are obtained. You can kind of get them from rares every now and again. I've killed quite a lot of rares here now. And also, there'll be one of the world quests, generally speaking, has mana pearls on it, like 3 or 4 for you to get. And then, of course, we have a quartermaster that comes with that. Now, the quartermaster is right here. And the Quartermaster right now has essences for the most part. So essences are the new neck powers that you will be getting. And they have the one legendary one for the Memory of Lucid Dreams. Just a reminder here, the legendary versions are in fact cosmetic only. If you have the purple version of the essences, then they are the most powerful they will be. That's it. Power gain wise, it stops there. The legendary versions are entirely cosmetic, but the cosmetics are not yet in the game. We've had a few people pick up the legendary version of their essences, yet there's no cosmetic effect yet. So we'll wait and see on that. Other than that, the Quartermaster sells usual stuff, pets, tabard, and some recipes. Nothing particularly exciting. And there's also a sort of relinquished vendor. You probably remember from Argus. You can buy trinkets and things like that and then convert them into something that hopefully will be good for you. But not always. For those of you who are farming the Arcano Crystal back in the day, yeah, that kind of same system is in operation here. So what is the purpose of Nazjatar then? And how does it play? More importantly, how does this play? Well, Nazjatar there's a mount here, of course. I'm just going to browse around for you here so you get an idea. It requires Exalted and so on and so forth. And there you go. Here's your place. It's like the 400 stuff gets making it and upgrading your items. So you do have an upgrade system. So you buy like a helm and then you can upgrade it to something. And you can see they're relatively cheap, which I quite like. And then once you find the good one, it's a relatively good system. So you can fish around for various items. And then once you get the ones you want, you can then upgrade them all the way up to 430. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. You can come and gear people out here. So there's almost more grinding here. But as I said, the mana pearls are limited in their supply. So it's not Mechagon exactly. So if you saw the Ashara Warbringer, you'll kind of get a feel for what this is supposed to be. It's the city that sunk into the ocean when Ashara made the deal with N'Zoth, and of course turned the people into Naga. And that is where the Nazjatar is their capital. This is the capital here. Let's look at the map. It is enormous, which is kind of counterintuitive to the gameplay, unfortunately, but we'll get into that shortly. It's absolutely enormous. It's basically if you took Argus, the 3 zones of Argus, your Antoran Waste and your Macquarie and so on, and you stuck them all together, that's kind of what you've got here, if not larger than that. It's really big. Really, really big. You see, you've got variety of flight points here. Flight point here, 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 here. here, and we are going to get flying. Flying is enabled here as well. And as it is in the ocean, it is surrounded by this absolutely enormous and really spectacular wall of water. You can see it in the distance. You can see the actual motion in it of how just this cool wall of water. I'm going to just fly off for a moment just to show you an up-close version, an up-close area with the wall of water, because it's very impressive. If we come down here to the shipwrecks, we'll see that. And I'll turn my UI off while we fly over and I talk a little bit about this. So when you get here, you'll be presented with a story quest chain to do, and the story quest chain will serve two purposes. The first one is it's going to take you on basically the tour of Nazjatar and get you the first couple of flight points. Other flight points you can kind of walk up to on your travels and just click and you'll get it. You'll just still have the green exclamation mark. Other ones have like a mini story quest associated with them. You can see here how the shipwrecks are hanging out of the water here. I really love this. I really love how they've done this. The art team, again, has outdone themselves here. And I know, and I will want to be clear here, I have seen a lot of the feedback on Nazjatar from like immediate responses, and we'll address the aesthetic and the theme of the place is kind of the elephant in the room, but we will get there. Don't worry about it. But I do like what they've done here. You can picture that this place was underwater. You can see how the plants have like wilted down. Now the water's gone. They should obviously be up and swaying in the water themselves. But as the water's disappeared, they're all drooping down and lost that. And the shipwrecks that were probably like half floating or balanced on rocks and stuff have just collapsed down onto the rocks and smashed into them now that the water is not supporting them anymore. There's a lot of things that thematically fit with what Nazjatar is supposed to be. I think that's a really, really good thing that they've added in. Going forward then, in terms of the story will take you on the tour of Nazjatar, so it'll kind of take you around the area, but also it will introduce you to various characters which will appear in the raid, the Eternal Palace, which is here. And you can see I have the quest just here, which is to kill Queen Ashara, so I've done the pre-raid story quest. So it wants you to be aware of some of the raid bosses in there, flesh out a little bit of their backstory, why are you fighting these guys, why are they mad at you, and so on and so forth, and that's quite nice. Then we get to the nitty-gritty of it, and this comes down to a problem Blizzard really is giving us as testers who want to give feedback on this stuff on the PTR right now, and it's the same issue that is affecting Mechagon, is that a lot of this stuff is reputation-gated. A lot of the content here is reputation-gated, which means it's extraordinarily difficult to give proper feedback because you don't have the whole picture. You can't give me like an unplugged mouse, for example, and tell me how, and ask for feedback on how this thing operates in a variety of different systems, from games to word processing. I can't do with that because this, yeah, I can tell you how it feels to hold, right? I can tell you what the zone looks like. I can do that, but in terms of testing it properly, I don't know, because I don't know what you're going to give me afterwards. I've no idea. Mechagon suffers the same problem. Mechagon, starts reasonably well, and then quickly, within 3 days, you will be recycling the same content over and over again. They have about 2 to 3 days worth of sort of daily activities available for you in Mechagon, and then they start recycling it immediately. So you're like, oh god, 3 days in, I've done everything already. And it does feel that way, although we do know now some people have power grinded to honored, right? We're not talking about revered or exalted here, to honored, because they're giving us so little reputation for these zones that some more stuff does happen. Is that stuff good? I'm not willing, and I don't think it's fair that Blizzard expects people to grind and grind and grind on the PTR to test their content to see if it works or if it's good, or give feedback on it. The likelihood, of course, is that everything here is set in stone anyway, and there's no real changes that can be made. But if there's a chance of making the game better, providing us those tools would be handy. I know I don't want to harp on about it too much, but to give you an example, I've been here for a few days. I've seen how the cycles of the quests have come in and things like that, and my reputation is 450 out of neutral. 450 out of neutral. Now, this does present several problems depending on how I want to tackle this representation of Nazjatar to you, because there's nothing here to do in this zone, like pretty much. There's a world boss, which is over here, which we've killed, and as you would expect, it poses no challenge whatsoever. Every day you get like 4 or 5 world quests if we include the pet battle. One of them generally has mana pearls on it. The others are usual stuff. This zone is enormous, so doing 4 or 5 world quests in here is actually relatively time-consuming because you're traveling so far. On top of that, they provide 3 daily quests, generally, which are bounties. What are these bounties, you might ask? kill 15 mana rays, kill 20 crab people, find some things lying on the floor. That's it. That's what they're providing for me. So I could, in essence, be Mr. Clickbait. And I could be like, Nazjatar is just like the biggest waste of time ever. Because there's just nothing. The zone is way too big. It's way, way, way too big for the amount of content they've got to put in here. It's beautiful. Like a lot of these places, you can turn your camera in almost any direction, get almost like a backdrop that you would have as a background on your, on your PC or a wallpaper or something like that. It's really beautiful in a lot of zones. And again, I'll come back to the aesthetic and theme. Don't worry about it. I'm not blind to the concerns a lot of people have about Nazjatar. But just saying, like, in general, I mean, it's hard to say that that's not a cool place. And all I'm doing is turning my camera everywhere. But the issue is there's nothing in this zone, like, pretty much. There are very small pockets of activity. And for some strange reason, a lot of these pockets of dense and interesting activity that's going on are all kind of around the edges. And the more central you go, generally the less and less you actually find. It feels like the spread too thin is a phrase I'm seeing a lot now. More and more of 8.2 is being shown to us, is that they are just spread too thin. 2 zones, a brand new mega dungeon, a brand new raid, along with a whole host of other things that are coming in 8.2, a huge varieties of mounts, pets, all kinds of stuff coming in. And it's the content and the gameplay that seems to have suffered because they really don't seemingly have enough stuff to put in here that isn't like absolute bare bones easy to make stuff, right? So there are some world quests that I've done that have a little bit more interest than your average world quest. So you think of them more like invasion world quests, where they're still at the base. They do the basic world quest, which is kill 10 things, pick up 5 things, and then they might have an extra element tacked onto that, such as now go and kill the prophecy of the speaker or the slimy tentacle man who does the thing. So you get an extra like rare mob to kill at the end. But that's about as far as it goes. I have had some things where we like feed a hydra, then you can control the hydra for 30 seconds or so and kill a rare mob. You get a general theme where it has some sort of polish off to it, and those are genuinely a little bit more interesting, but certainly not cutting edge by any means. Like we've been having that for generations. In fact, as I have it here, I did, out of curiosity, wander over to the Isle of Thunder. This was one of mine. I have several sort of daily quest intended areas that I consider to be really good. The Firelands is one, and the Isle of Thunder I consider to be my favorite one, the Isle of Thunder. So I went back here actually earlier on just to sort of refresh myself on why I thought this area was so great. Really didn't take me that long actually to remember. So as you probably, if you've never been here or it's been a while, let me refresh you with some of the things here, is that you come through this portal and then you arrive here and you're immediately presented not with these quests actually, but with this map that you can see there. And this map asks you, do you want to do PvP stuff here or do you want to do PvE stuff? A really good choice. So if you choose PvE stuff, you're then presented with some very basic world quests. You can see I've got one for the crag here. And I've got this one. And then it sets you about your way. And the way this zone unfolds, as you can see, it gives me 2 areas. These are both daily hubs. Like, approaching these areas will then unlock more stuff to do in the island. First thing I also remembered is the theme of the place fits perfectly. This is the Isle of Thunder. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it fucking is. Now, I'm not saying Nazjatar doesn't fit that theme either, because, of course, there's a giant water wall around it. Yeah, as we're going to see in a minute, I'm going to go back to Nazjatar. Don't worry about that. As you'll see in a minute, it really sort of is familiar, let's say. So when we came here, there was also a number of other things that you did here as well. So we did get standard dailies, which were located in these areas. These areas were extremely thematically different. I always loved the electricity effect on the trees as well. I thought that was pretty tremendous. And also there's rare mobs, of course. Usual standard stuff. But this zone is actually goddamn small. Really small. And the Firelands is also very, very small. But the fact of the matter is, by making it small, you can see we have this whole undead area with ghosts and nasty evil things risen from the dead. And then very quickly, as we move through here, you can see there's more quests to pick up on here. And this is kind of like how you moved through the zone, is you traveled through picking up quests as you went along your way. It doesn't take very long. It takes actually about less than a minute probably to ride through this. And this all contains various interesting quests. I remember a very particular rare mob up there that was quite interesting. If we move through here, I'm going the wrong way because it has been many years since I've ridden around this place, so you'll have to bear with me. Is the aesthetic completely changes almost immediately. As soon as you come out of the undead area and head slightly, like literally to here, we enter a town. And there's all these trolls and cages and stuff. You can see how close it is. You can see the ghosts in there, and then it switches over to here. Similar again, if we go around to the Igaluk Crag, there's also many different Saurid mobs and taking over robots and things like that. Now, at the same time, we have in the center the big Thunder Temple of itself. And then we have the cave located here, which contained a mini scenario for the treasures, you might remember, where you got a scenario and a limited number of goes to go through a treasure hunt and try and find things. On top of that, as the story unfolded, you then ended up with a finale quest, which ended up in the main temple area, where you could go and actually deal with a puzzle scenario towards the end. And you can see inside here, there was all sorts of hidden daily quests for you to do. Now, I loved this zone because, one, it was very varied, because whichever area it sent you to was generally different on most days, although it only cycled through 2 or 3, similar to Nazjatar. But each time it gave variance, and then it led to more interesting things, and then sometimes I could come here and do other things. Kind of similar to the Timeless Isle, although I'll say personally I preferred this. And not only that, they had treasure chests lying around, which were actually interesting because they contained things like Warlock Green Fire and other coins and things like that, and ways of accessing the actual cave system here, which made it something you wanted to come and do even after you were exalted. Now, I'm floating around this area because there was a golden treasure chest lying on the floor here, but I think someone's probably snagged it while I was setting up to record the video. I rode around to try and refamiliarize myself with the area, and just bumped into a treasure chest, and I was like, oh my god, I remember there was like these treasure chests lying around, which gave you all these cool things. But going back to Nazjatar, as we are back here, as you can see, you're rather immediately in the older zones forced into stuff. And similar with the Broken Shore, actually. If you go to the Broken Shore, it takes less than sort of 10 to 15 seconds before you get started into the areas that involve you, like doing the world quest and stuff. And again, the Broken Shore is a very small zone. So with the compactness, they fit a lot in. Let's look at Nazjatar. So this is Newhome. It actually takes you quite some time to get involved in anything because there's just not that much going on in the zone. If we like even dive down into the pits of hell here, hopefully I won't die. That would be nice. Let's hop. Ooh, and cat form. Yeah, I don't need it. As you can see, you can ride for quite some time. You can see we started here, so we've traveled a fair distance already. Now we get a couple of elementals. Just 2. Naga, and a couple of crabs. Now, I will point out none of these were involving world quests or anything. And the fact is, because it only gives like 4 or 5 world quests, there's just, you can see how sparse this area is. And this is the real drawback, is for big, long chains. And my view draw distance is at its maximum, by the way. It's not a case of the things are just going to appear in front of me or anything like that. There's just nothing here. And it's really quite sad, like how much effort has gone into designing this place. Because you can tell there's a lot of design work gone into here. But there's barely anything here. And there are just these odd pockets of activity. In fact, I have this... I really didn't intend this, I swear to you. We've actually ridden to the raid entrance now and not really bumped into anything at all. This is actually the central city. This is it. This is there's the Shara's Eternal Palace. Like, there it is. There's just nothing here at all in so many areas of it. And that's not to say that all the area is empty. That's not true. Like, there's the Eternal Palace there. There's the Tidestone and Jaina's there and whatever. But if you kind of have to go out of your way. And I think what's happened here is they've listened to a lot of the feedback. Like, here there's stuff going on, right? There's something happening here, which is pretty cool as we go off. And again, you kind of have to go off the beaten track because I think they really did not like the feedback people gave on Argus. Which is that there was just too much going on. And it was too mob dense. So they've really dropped it down. There's nothing under here. Now, I kind of got to hang around here because I think we do need to talk about the aesthetic. So one of my biggest concerns certainly is that there's just nothing in the zone, really. There's like some odd pockets of stuff. But it's spread way, way too thin. And I think that's intentional, but it just makes the zone feel empty. Unfortunately, that's the real shame of it. And I think it was because of how many people were moaning about Argus, and rightfully so, because I complained about it too, is that you were constantly being dismounted, and it was frustrating, but at the same time, where there was Legos that counted it, and I ended up making a World Quest set, which is kind of more RPG than normal. And I quite like that. But I agree, Argus had its problems, but we seem to have swung the pendulum in the complete opposite direction now, where a lot of the zone is really bare bones and really light on enemies for what is the capital city. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way, the aesthetics. So, as I've said a couple of times now, it's very hard to point your camera in a direction and not get something pretty goddamn cool out of it. I think they've done a really good job. But I am not blind to the fact that most of the zone is really gloomy, dark, and fucking miserable. Not all of it. The bits in the water are much better, as you can see, right? But these are very few and far between. And I agree with people who are like, can we not have some bioluminescence here like we had in Vashir? Something along those lines. Now, the first thing I want to talk about before we get too deeply into this, and I'll show you some different areas to say that, look, they have tried, and a lot of this fits the theme. But my concern, actually, is that Nazjatar doesn't make any sense. Now, I want to be clear on this, because I know I'm going to get some blowback on this, but I've hashed this out with quite a few guys now. But Nazjatar, this area is 10,000 years old. And they've done nothing with it, like, at all. This was a real opportunity to show what the Naga were doing for 10,000 years, because this is their capital. This is the capital city. Now, the counters to this, because we played Devil's Advocate as like a little team of us. We played Devil's Advocate to explanations as to why there's nothing here in terms of development of a society. Right? So part of the law, and we have had Nobble in on this, part of the law is that they wanted to make, Queen of Shara was going to make it better than any highborn thing ever made. And they've not done anything, like, at all. Like, this is the palace. So the first thing is we've seen the BlizzCon map, and the palace is the city, right? And it has on the map that there's living quarters for the Naga, and there's a military quarter for the Naga, and there's the palace as a whole. One, it's way too small to be considered a city that certainly had the growth of 10,000 years. On top of that, like, if you consider that what we know of as like the developed United States of America is a few hundred years old, then it really makes no fucking sense. It makes absolutely no sense that Nazjatar appears this way. It's crazy. So this is the ruins. This is the immediate surroundings of the palace, where there's a few Naga homes, and this is kind of what I would expect to see. You can see these Naga homes that are kind of dotted around the place, but these are only in this very immediate area. They really don't span outside of this little bit here. And then we have a forest, which I've just been through, and the shipwreck area, which is down here. So I'm going to leave that there, because they obviously decided not to go the way that the Naga have been up to something for 10,000 years, and I think they're going to just front load it all into the palace and be like, well, there's the city, but regardless of anybody trying to twist it for me, not twist it, but throw some sort of like counter into it, it makes no fucking sense. I think they're hoping people don't really appreciate how much 10,000 years is, but they could easily make variety while still making this look like something that has been being developed for 10,000 years. And there's no way we're in a suburb. So one of the arguments we had was that maybe we're in a faraway suburb. So maybe it's like on the teetering edge. No, there's the palace. Like, there's no way. I also want to be clear, I'm not expecting them to make a large sprawling city, but the impression that it is a city would have made more sense to me, like they did with Suramar. Suramar gives you the impression like the city stretches right out to the outskirts where we are and goes all the way into a central city. That makes way more sense to me than this. Way more sense to me. Let me get to a flight point then. We're going to have to go this way. So I'm going to show you some various areas. So it's a very large zone with seemingly not a lot in it. As you could tell, like, I'm not making it up, but we're riding around here, and I'm going to go show you the different zone. Now, I do agree with people saying it's just too dark and gloomy. Some areas are. Like, this area is more brightly lit, but it's certainly not, like, brightly lit if we compare it to Vashir or something like that. No, it's not. And the fantasy world, you can go a little bit further with things. Let's go to the ruins. This would make sense to show you some stuff. I'll turn my UI off again as we fly around so you can get an idea. But it is gorgeous. I think it's unfair to say it's not a good-looking area, depending on which area you're in, of course. But the actual stuff immediately surrounding the palace, I think is really cool. I like that. Then we get into the ruins, and this is unfortunate because I would have turned, if I was given like the project, I certainly would have made this into the Nazjatar old area, like the old town. Similar, and I think a lot of people are going to compare this to the recent Aquaman movie, where they did exactly what I thought they were going to do here, which is Atlantis has been left alone for a very long time in that movie. I don't care about the quality of the movie, of course, but they then ran with it. They were like, what did these guys do for all this time that they were down there on their own? Is they developed and developed and developed, and they created a mega city that had old areas and things like that. This is the bit people are going to get triggered by, but I understand why they've done it. Like, this is the thing. I understand why they've done it, but it's still gonna backlash on them. It's still gonna backlash on them. So this is the ruins. This is what you see in the Ashara Warbringer that actually collapsed down. Now, you're gonna have mega deja vu here because they have duplicated areas of Azuna here very, very closely. Like, there's some minor differences, but they have some stuff is copy and paste, but it's supposed to be. And this is the thing. It's supposed to be the same things that collapsed down. Like, they weren't different then. But regardless, and I just said them, they're going to get backlash anyway, because when you get into these areas, and what I mean by this is you will come down a road and you'll be like, I've been here before. And you'll look around and everything is insanely familiar in terms of like the layout of buildings, where the road takes you, which way it curves round, and you know instinctively what should be on your right-hand side, what should be on your left-hand side, and you will be right. You'll be absolutely correct. Now, while it makes sense that it kind of looks like that, although the layout of the land should have been a little different in certain areas, people are going to think it's really lazy. They're just going to say you just copy and pasted Azuna. And I've seen that thrown around everywhere. And they're not wrong, but it's kind of intentional. But it doesn't help the fact that it pulls you out. It pulls you out. That's unavoidable because you're like, oh, I've been here before. Oh, it's just Azuna. So I'll give you an example. Like, if you look around this area, you might say, I've been somewhere similar to this before. Yeah, if you were to add some ballistas here and say there are mobs roaming around here and you went up these stairs to find a rare mob up there, and perhaps in this building you did some Harry Potter wizard shit and you did some daily quest on top of this building, and then you would come down this alleyway, and on your left-hand side would be a couple of quest NPCs for the story. And then as you moved up here, there would be a door up here on your right-hand side, right? That would have a book on the floor that would be part of a quest. Then you would probably go up these stairs, and then you would find another book right about there. And then at the end of this corridor, you would find a treasure chest there. And then you would come over this hill and fight a rare mob in there. It's the exact same building and layout. Dual buildings, in fact, that you had in Azuna. And there are countless examples of this around this area where you're just like, oh, I've been here before. Now, the thing is, World of Warcraft has done that for a long, long time. Like, there's only about 6 different caves in the game. Right? We've got to be realistic here. There's only like 6 different caves. There's only like 3 or 4 different internal buildings. Like, they reuse assets tons and tons of times. The issue more is that the layout of the area also feels identical, which you can't say happens that often anywhere else. You can't say that you ran down a road in, say, Suramar, and it felt like you were running down the same road in Azuna. No. They're not. They're not the same. But this time it does feel the same, which is why I think some people will be like, ugh, do not like. Do not like. As it stands, that's Nazjatar in a nutshell. There's just nothing much to do here for the size of the place. And again, I did go to other zones and I was like, well, what about other zones? It's like, well, one, they're way, way smaller. There's world bosses here, which is the same. Tick the box as their world quests. Yes, but these are done better. In my opinion, you got to wear suits. You got to jump up mountains. We got to control robots here. There was a whole bunch of stuff to do here. Alongside with that, there was opening of an interesting treasure chests that weren't just the usual crap we get in BFA, which has like 10 war resources in it. Then there was a scenario to do on a weekly basis, which also gave you coins to go out and do another raid. And then there was a finale to it, should you choose to do it if you were exalted, where you got to do a different puzzle at the end of it. There was good thematic stuff going on, and near enough, it's very, very hard to travel more than a few yards here without bumping into something of interest. And if not, something very cool. It's subjective for sure, but I would argue this area alone, with the lightning animated Mogus and the statues and the lightning crashing down in the sky, is a lot more interesting than what looks like a leveling area in Azuna, right? And I think that's fair to say. I think that's a fair criticism, in my opinion, of looking at this zone and playing around in it. Now, the caveat to all this, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but I will round up on it because I think it's important to remember, is that I'll do a nice overhead flight so you get an idea. is that once we hit friendly, once we hit honored, once we hit revered, a whole new world might open up, a whole new spectacular world. The chances are, because you might say, well, come back, preach, and show us that when you get there, is no, I am not going to farm. They give you about 150 reputation a day from here. As it stands, about 150 rep a day. Some people might go ahead and do that, but that is absolutely not something I'm prepared to do on a test realm. Absolutely not. And certainly not with 2 zones. I'm not doing that. It's crazy. It's crazy to expect anybody to do that. Instead, there should just be a fucking guy that boosts you to friendly once you've done if you've done like the opening quest and all the day's daily quests. There should be a guy who's like, okay, we're going to boost you to friendly now to unlock the rest of it so you can test that out. Now we're going to boost you to honored. Now we're going to boost you to revered. Or they release that every couple of days so that you spend a couple of days, okay, this is what it's like at neutral and then friendly and so on and so forth. And it has no relevance because these aren't live characters. If they genuinely wanted feedback, because what feedback can I give? If this zone's too big, we can't change that. Like... They're not going to scrap the zone, but it is too big. There's just nothing here. As you can see, you just ride around. And you do find these odd pockets of stuff happening. Like if... Because I'm not off the beaten track here. I'm right in the zone. One could argue I'm too high up, so we'll go further down. Let's go to this building. See what's going on here. Nothing. Okay. I think we're heading back towards the capital here. So now we've got some Naga. And again, it's like these pockets of things near the palace. But it's mainly on these like weird outcroppings that there's lots going on. And it definitely feels like they got started fleshing out the zone to make it really intricate and interesting. And providing like what would appear to be a full city lived in for 10,000 years. It seems like they started like filling it. But I think they either ran out of time or this isn't finished yet. But I would guess this is pretty much what it's going to be like when it goes live, which is it's just too big. It's just too big. If there's nothing creative to put in it, I think that's always... for me, it's like looking at both Mechagon and Nazjatar, it just feels like Blizzard's got really good at creating very, very wonderfully designed and beautifully decorated buckets. There's nothing in the bucket, though. There's nothing here. Like, if the best we can come up with is... kill 15, kill 20 daily quests and 4 or 5 world quests, and that's like it. That's like all we have to do. Then it needs to reflect that if we don't have the content to put in it. And the content might exist, so fingers crossed. I genuinely fingers crossed, because if this is a place that would tend to spend some months in, then it would be nice if there was lots to do. But as you can see, there's like little pocket towns like this, and then there's huge swathes of just like nothing much going on. But now we go to the outskirts, and this is I just want to show you it. Like if we go to like a really obscure area, like up here, right? And this is like little crazy mountainous regions, well away from any flight point. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier with some of the world quests, is they're very dotted around. This is, I mean, we do have to ride around considerably. Won't be as bad with flying, of course, but what's the point in making a longer flight distance if there's just nothing here? It looks nice. I still think the art teams did a great job, despite people's concerns. What have we got up here? We've got some frozen things. Yeah, we've got a village up here. It's buried off back here somewhere, but we have got a village next to the waterwall, so we are at the edge of the zone now. And it's got rainbows and shit. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And now we're getting some sort of activity of the people that live here, right? But again, it's right on the edge of the map. Right on the edge of the map. So I think if I was to provide any feedback to Blizzard based on what you've presented me to test, 1, drop the 3 bounties per day to 1 at a minimum. If all we have to choose from is kill fucking manta rays and kill crabs or pick shit off the floor, make it 1 and just triple the rep that comes from it. Because I think each of those gives 50 rep. Just make 1 so that people do the 1 as they're running around, right? There's no need for 3 tedious quests. If the world quests are as they are, I would really focus them in individual areas. Like, there's no reason that you can't do it in a style of, okay, the ruins, we need to be securing the ruins today, right? Like, the Naga have pushed back. And then we could have this territory. I would argue that it would be a really good idea right now with this. Don't give everybody everything. Have the Naga controlling it. So you can, let's just pretend in our mind's eye that the sort of dark green brownie area, which goes around here, is Naga controlled. Like, it's impossible to break through that, but we have to start securing this area and pushing into here. And we start moving into this area, but we're going to lose some territory here. And then we have this idea that we're attacking a capital city and overall building our presence here. But the forces, this is their capital. It's the same problem we had in Argus, is we turned up at Argus in the Legion fucking command hub, the Stronghold, and we just went in and went, move! And we just fucking browed our way through like absolute madmen without any resistance, pretty much. We just dominated the whole fucking place. The enemy needs to win sometimes. And I have a separate video coming on this. The enemy needs to win sometimes. And we should be struggling here instead of riding around looking for shit to do. Right? That's not the way it should be. We should definitely be controlling and moving points around and make it more strategic and more interesting. It's so big that you can do that. This area is so huge that you can really condense the action to specific areas instead of being like, there's all the world quests and they're all over the zone. And you're like, oh God, this is just a lot of driving around. Focus our intent in certain places. I think that would be a far better system than doing that, than just opening up the whole area and being like, everybody drink it in, because regardless of whether you think Nazjatar is beautiful or not, if you do think it's wonderful and beautiful, that aesthetic is going to wear on you pretty quickly. So that's my feedback right now, based on the idea that probably Friendly, Honored, and Revered do add some more world quests, but like that's it. They just add more world quests, which makes more sense if you say we've gained a footing. So if all the world quests and content were focused here or here, because this is where we're starting camp up or whatever, right? And then as we hit like Honored, we started to get more areas to attack, and it really started to flesh the zone out as we were pushing into the Eternal Palace. That might make more sense for me. So I look forward to your feedback, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.